Hello, Professor, family, friends, and any other psychology nerd who decided to stumble upon this video. As the title suggests, this video is about people who live and deal with dissociative identity disorder. Formerly known as multi-personality disorder, this is a really complex disorder. It's pro-nurture in the epic debate of nurture versus nature. This disorder targets children who are severely abused, physically, sexually, mentally. Over 6 million children are abused every year. 80% of those children will form a mental disorder. DID is not a common disorder, though. It's only for the extreme cases. These people are isolated, they feel alone, they're neglected, they don't know what else to do. Their brain breaks up into pieces. Basically, they're forming new identities within one person. So a person could be themselves, like as you see me right now, but I'll also be a 5-year-old child and a 34-year-old male, just to protect secrets, the past, all away from that one identity. Their range in age, gender, they all have their own history, their own names. They all know something that the main persona doesn't know. And that's kind of why it is a coping and defensive mechanism used by a lot of people. This is also really big in PTSD, where they have like their military background and then their normal civilian background. These two disorders are really common in a lot of ways, and it's especially like the way that it affects the brain physically. These next 3 cases that I'm going to talk about are some of the wildest ones that I've come across. They're some of the most extreme, and they're some of the most unusual. So, first off, we have Gretchen. Sorry about the really bad photo. But Gretchen is a 34-year-old mom. Her husband divorced her and took the kids with him. She went back to school, tried to get her life on track. But her different personalities weren't letting her get very far. She was sexually abused as a child. All these cases were sexually abused. And basically her brain was broken down into a child, an aggressive teenager, and then her deepest, darkest inner self was like this demonic type persona. Her teenage rebel was there to protect her, so when Gretchen couldn't handle the stress that was going on around her, that rebellious teenager would come out and would protect her. That teenager also hated her. The teenager wanted to basically murder Gretchen. When Gretchen would regain control of herself, she would find cuts and bruises, broken fingers, broken arms, broken toes, all that kind of stuff, just because this one aggressive teenager just did not like her. Gretchen herself didn't know too much about all her other personas, so her therapist told her about journaling. So Gretchen started journaling back and forth between her different identities. And it was just the one teenager. She didn't really know about the child or her inner darkest demon. With the journals, she found out that her other persona just hated everything. She would find blood marks that were from her own wrists. She would find the word hate written a million times. And they're 2 different writing styles, too. Like, they both had, like, their own writing ways, their own writing styles. You could tell the difference between Gretchen and her other persona. And it was insane, like, the way that her other persona would just take over. It wouldn't come in Like, she wouldn't have any feelings. She wouldn't know when it was going to take over. It just took her over. And it sent her into, like, this sort of sleep where it was just black. She didn't know what was going on. She'd wake up confused. She would lose, like, days, hours. And it's just scary. It's the way you think about it. It's just scary how your mind can just take over and totally change everything for you, where you go into this amnesia and everything's different. The only way that they really got her to get over most of this was when they were going through therapy. And it was a talk therapy. And that's when her childlike persona came out. And this 5-year-old girl who remembered everything from her past. I remembered all the sexual abuse, all the physicalities of it. She remembered everything that Gretchen herself didn't know. Gretchen didn't know much of her childhood. She didn't remember a lot of it. And that's because this childlike persona took it all in. When they went further into, like, hypnosis with her, this demonic state came out. And this demonic state was bent on if Gretchen herself found out the truth about her past, that it would kill her. And that's even scarier. Like, your body itself is saying that it's going to kill you if you find out about your past. Even though that's the only way that you really get over this disorder, is knowing everything that happened and breaking the barriers between all your personas and bringing them back into one. And that's just crazy. Like, she got her kids taken away from her. Her husband left her because she can't stay one person. She can't be herself because all these different personas are taking over her life. Then we have John here. Another bad picture. He's a cop with a really bad case of multi-personality disorder, or DID. He has 5 different personalities. He also has a child personality. He has an Army Ranger personality and emotionalist personality, and then a very emotional personality. His childlike and very emotional personalities all know about his past, and so does his emotionless. The only time that any researcher or therapist could ever get to them is when those 2 or 3 were talking. They all were different. They all spoke differently. Their voices changed, and it was crazy to see how fast it can happen, how fast their personality can go from one extreme to another so quick. And you can tell because their voices go from, like, this manly voice to, like, this little kid crying in a corner. But John is a cop, so when he was on pursuit of a person, one personality would take over to do all the driving, do all the reckless and careless street driving and everything like that. And then when he would arrest somebody, another personality would take over that was assertive and forceful. And John himself knew about all these different personalities. He knew their names, he knew who they were and what they were, but he didn't know his past. The one thing that was kept from him with all these different personalities. And when all the different personalities were out, they all recognized John as John, but not as them, even though they looked the same and everything like that, and they all lived the same place. But they all distinguished John as a separate entity than them. Barb, I couldn't get a picture of her off the internet, but Barb was our last one, and she's a mother of 3. She was still married in the video. She was very interesting. This one was probably the weirdest one, where she would go to an 8-year-old state when playing with her kids or when going down, like, the cereal aisle or going shopping. she would turn into like this little kid who just was so excited about everything and had like this super childlike charisma about it. Her voice would change, and her children understood. Her children were very accepting of everything. They knew like all her different personalities and everything like that. And it's very odd to see like children react that way to like their parents being completely different and like going from one personality to another just so easily. Other than her 5-year-old persona, she had a teenage rebel, just like our first one. But this one would take money and steal and lie and do all sorts of things that were basically kind of tearing the family apart. Barb's husband understood that she can't control it and that it's not her doing it, but he still hated it. He wanted some way to find out like how he could get his wife back. He wanted the Barb that he knew and the Barb that was the main persona of this woman. This teenager got their family into debt a lot, writing checks that would bounce and buying everything and everything like that. She also had a male persona that helped her when she was being abused. He kind of stood up for her a bit, but he would get really angry really fast. He's broken her hands and her arms and her legs before out of his rages. And when Barb would come back, she had no idea what happened. She had no idea that he broke her arm or anything like that. And it's just crazy to think that you could break your arm and not know it. And it's just mind-blowing how this is their daily life, is going through all these changes. I couldn't imagine like not knowing what happened. I couldn't imagine like what her husband was feeling or anything like that. These are cases of severe child abuse. So through these stories, I'm kind of hoping that more people will look into that. More people will stand up for children and definitely take charge and know the risk that people are taking every day. And know that just because the abuser is gone doesn't mean the abuse itself is gone. These things last, and they take over your entire life for the rest of your life. And it starts so young. So not only are you going through like the actual abuse, you're going to live with it for the rest of your life. So yeah, I hope you guys kind of enjoyed that. It's my first video, so it's not as grand as I thought it would be. And have a good night.